Hello and welcome to another video tutorial here on understanding body language, liars, cheese and happy feet. It's Saturday night, I hope everyone's had a good day. So the video I got for you today is Ron Paul, who is running for the presidency of the United States. Now, living in Great Britain, we don't get to see these candidates on TV as much as you do over there in the States, so I don't know the background of this chap. However, I am interested in the non-verbal behaviour he shows throughout this segment of the interview. Now then, the segment I've got for you is when he's discussing some controversial newsletters that came out, I think it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I'm going to look at the non-verbal behaviour he shows to see whether he's still showing signs of stress about them. So let's have a look at the video from that point onwards, and let's see if we can decode anything that gives anything away. So let's begin.
But they were called the Ron Paul Report, and did you read them at all when they were published during those years? Did you ever sort of take a look at it and say, you know what, this isn't what I stand for?
Not all the time.
But you did read them.
Not all the time.
Well,
on occasion, yes.
And did you ever object when you read them?
Well, you know, we talked about this twice yesterday at CNN. Why don't you go back and look at what I said yesterday on CNN? And what I've said for 20-some years is 22 years ago. I didn't write them. I disavow them. That's it.
But you made money.
Okay, so that's a statement he gives when he's talking about these controversial newsletters. There's a couple of things I've noticed there. The first thing, whenever we talk about a date or trying to recall some information that happened a long time ago, we'll often squint our eyes down, and the eyebrows will often come down, pull hard down and together. And we can see that here.
Did you read them?
So watch how the eyebrows...
Not all the time.
So he's saying he didn't read them all the time.
Not all the time.
So not all the time, if you're doing statement analysis, all the time is not saying you didn't read them. He's just saying all the information he's giving up there, he didn't read them all the time. So there might be some times when he did read them.
Well, on occasion, yes.
And did you ever object when you read them?
Well, you know, we talked about this twice yesterday at CNN.
Okay, so he's refusing to answer the question now because he's saying that obviously yesterday he covered this topic.
Why don't you go back and look at what I said yesterday on CNN, and what I've said for 20-some years is 22 years ago.
Okay, so there we go. So when he recalls information that happened 22 years ago, we'll often see this kind of facial expression here. And it's not too dissimilar to the disgust micro-expression that we can make. And we make that by making the top lip go upwards, and the nose will start to crinkle also, and also here the eyelids will start to shut very slightly. So it's almost like your body is rejecting the sight and smell of something. So the disgust facial expression sometimes comes in when you try and recall information that's happened a long time ago. So this kind of facial expression here is perfectly acceptable when he's talking about trying to recall information that happened a long time ago. So just to recap with the disgust expression, the crinkling of the nose kicks in, the top lip will start to raise slightly, and also the eyelids will start to close slightly as well. And Charles Darwin also found that in the disgust micro-expression that the nose area here will close slightly, so it will allow for any kind of disgusting smells or any rotten food. It'll actually start to close the airways very slightly, so that you won't be able to actually smell the offending smell. So that's one of the anatomical reasons why we make one of these particular facial expressions. So the disgust facial expression is one of 7 universal expressions that we can all make regardless of age, gender, ethnic origin, things like that. So out of the 43 muscles we can make, out of 43 muscles of the face, out of the 10,000 facial expressions we can make, this particular expression here is one of them. So
I didn't write them. I disavow them. That's it.
Okay, so let's just have a look at that particular expression there. Obviously, we're only getting a half shot of Ron here when he's talking about these. But one thing I do notice here...
What I said yesterday on CNN, and what I've said for 20-some years is 22 years ago. I didn't write them.
That particular expression there, when he says, I didn't write them, so, and what I notice here is the corners of the arms, which will pronate and rotate round to make the palms going up.
And what I've said for 20-some years is 22 years ago.
Watch the arms here.
I didn't write them.
Okay, so that instinctive response there is a good sign. Okay, if he's telling the truth, often we'll find the palms will go straight up and they're almost like I'm telling you the truth pose. Okay, so that's a good expression. Also, his facial expression matches that as well.
I didn't write them.
Okay, and that's where the eyebrows shoot up and he makes a relatively neutral face, and that's good. So a relatively neutral smile, I should say. So those are good signs there. So we're seeing a cluster of movement here that is consistent, potentially, with truth-telling.
But you made money off of them.
However, we do see this particular facial expression coming in, which is contempt, which is where it's the only asymmetrical facial expression or asymmetrical universal facial expression we can make. Okay, and it's where the corners of one corner of the mouth presses into the sides. We're using two muscles there, and contempt comes in when we sometimes feel smug or happy about something, and potentially happy about something that somebody else doesn't know. So the lady in question here is just asked, did you make any money on them?
Money off of them.
And his immediate facial reaction, which is called physiognomy, which is the interpretation of character and temperament based on facial expressions, his immediate facial expression is to flash us contempt there. So it means that potentially he knows more about this situation than we do. And let's see his response.
Still practicing medicine. That was probably why I wasn't a very good publisher, because I had to make a living.
So he doesn't answer the question. Should again?
But you made money off of them.
Flashes us contempt, so secretly that means yes.
That was probably why I wasn't a very good publisher, because I had to make a living.
But there are reports that you made almost $1 million off of them in 1993.
Oh, I'd like to see that money.
And there you go. And it comes in with speech errors, which is consistent with showing us contempt. Because don't forget, contempt comes in when he potentially is, he knows something about this situation that we don't.
But there are reports
and it comes in here.
Almost $1 million off of them in 1993.
I'd like to see that money.
And you can see that with these increases speech rate and speech hesitation. We can see that. So there's potentially links there becoming between the contempt facial expression and speech hesitations and speech errors. Potentially there's a link between those two. So that's interesting.
But would you give it back? If you made money off of them and you disavow, charity, if you made money off of them and you disavow it.
I didn't write them, and I don't endorse those views, and I've explained it many times.
So.
Okay, and what's interesting there is the imaginary buttoning of the shirt. Now, people often do this to relieve stress in stressful situations. We'll start unbuttoning things that we don't need to unbutton. We'll start fiddling with our cufflinks or our ties, things to dissipate stress when we feel threatened or uncomfortable. We can see this interview here is becoming slightly hostile because this interviewer is not letting up on Paul. So we can see this particular behaviour here coming in, where he starts to unbutton his jacket slightly. If you check out the video I did yesterday on the Jersey Shore one, let's just have a look at this. We can know here that the chap on the left does the same thing. This chap here, Michael, because he's not been engaged in the conversation and how he's the furthest away, he's got to dissipate that stress in this expression here. He starts fiddling around, he starts replaying with things, he checks down, he keeps playing. And there we go. So we're seeing behaviour seen throughout the world, no matter in what situation we're in, where people often start to imaginally fiddle with buttons and lapels and things like that just to dissipate stress. So again, we're seeing that behaviour here.
And I've explained it.
So it's a classic indicator of stress. Whenever you start seeing someone start fiddling with the jacket or the buttons or the cufflinks, it's an indicator that they feel maybe slightly threatened about the current situation they're in.
Many times.
So you read them, but you didn't do anything about it at the time.
I never read that stuff. I've never read it. I was probably aware of it 10 years after it was written. And it's been going on 20 years that people have pestered me about this, and CNN does it every single time. So when are you going to wear your...
Okay, so his actual response here looks pretty truthful. Doesn't seem to be any problems here. The head shakes are in the right place.
I was probably aware of it 10 years after it was written. And it's been going on 20 years that people have pestered me about.
Because you can tell that by the lack of speech errors and the lack of speech hesitations.
Yes, and CNN does it every single time. So when are you going to wear yourself out?
And it looks to be quite jocular as well. So that particular segment looks quite good. So obviously we don't know. This has been no ground truth available, but by his demeanour, things aren't looking too bad here. And what we can also note here is how stress elevates with his clenched fist. I don't know if you can see this here at the bottom of the video. He's got his fist clenched, which is again is linked to his behaviour at the minute because he's showing signs of anxiety with the buttoning up of his invisible buttoning up of the jacket. And we can also see here how he's clenching his fist, which again is an anxiety clue to his demeanour. So again, he's struggling here.
And when you get the when you get the answers legitimate, that you sort of take the answers I give. You know what? The answer is, I didn't write them. I didn't read them at the time, and I disavow them. That is the answer.
But you made money off of it.
If you know I made money on it, you know more about my finances than I do.
Okay, and there we go. So again, we can see speech hesitations when he's talking, when the interviewer talks about the money side of things. So did he make money on these, I suppose, offending newsletters?
I disavow them. That is the answer.
But you made money off of it.
So there we go.
If you know I made money on it.
So we get a false start, speech hesitations. So I think there's more to that story than he's willing to let on. But again, we don't know. We can just speculate.
Than I do.
Do you know that you didn't? I mean,
I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, if it was published for 10 years, so if that was 1% of all the newsletter, I made money off, talking about gold stocks.
Okay, so another little bit interesting video comes up now. Okay, when we see how the foot and leg behaviour
it's
here.
legitimate. These things are pretty incendiary.
So we can see now that the stress level is coming in. He starts to unbutton his jacket, and we can see how he now wants to just go side on towards the interviewer, just like that. He invades her personal space. The head shakes.
Because of people like you.
No.
Okay, and we can see how the feet play an integral role in body language. When we're feeling threatened about something, we want to try and get as far away from the stress and anxiety as we can. And we can see how the feet bob around here, and he's looking for a retreat. So he's uncomfortable.
For the bombing of the World Trade Center, that kind of stuff. All right.
Okay, and we can see his demeanour now, you see. So when we feel threatened, we will avoid eye contact at all things. So we can see how he drops the head down. He's purposefully avoiding eye contact because he doesn't want the conflict anymore. He's had enough.
Appreciate your answering the questions, and you understand it's our job to answer. Thank you.
Okay, and what we see now,
I understand.
okay, is this behaviour seen here by one of the interview. And that is touching the suprasternal notch. Okay, which is also known as the neck dimple, and we often touch this area here when we feel threatened or when we feel extreme anxiety. We'll often touch this area here. Often women wear necklaces and they start rubbing this area here when they feel threatened or fearful. What we see now again is it manifests the stress because now she's uncomfortable with the situation, potentially the proxemics issues here with the personal stress. She now makes this torso barrier here, which is common body language throughout the world where we feel threatened. We'll place our hands in front of our chest to avoid conflict through the vital organs like your heart, your lungs. So she's feeling threatened. What we see here from Ron is how he hides the hands.
You don't? Okay. Well,
He pops his hand, he pops both hands into his jacket here. He didn't have anything in his hands before he put them in, and when he takes his hands out, he has nothing in them neither. So again, it was a excuse to hide the hands. And we often hide the hands when we feel threatened. If you think about like the Dennis the Menace situation when he's getting rollicked or told off by his next door neighbour, he'll place his hands into his pockets. Again, it's a classic indicator and giveaway that he's had enough. And we can see that behaviour here. So we're seeing lots of examples of silent behaviour here kicking in where anxiety and stress is felt. We're seeing hand hiding behaviour, and we're seeing the suprastructural notch that she's touching there to relieve her stress. It's almost like a pacifying gesture. So the end of the interview here is not good. There's no closing. He just walks off because he's had enough. And we can also see, I'll pause it now, is the eye glare that Ron gives this lady here as well. So things have taken a big turn for the worst. So just to recap, what we saw the disgust microexpression, which comes in when we're trying to recall information that's happened a long time ago. It's not necessarily linked to the actual feeling of disgust. It's more linked to the actual creative or trying to remember something that's happened before. We see contempt, facial expression come in, potentially knows more than he's letting on. We see an increase in speech hesitations, speech errors when he's asked about the money he made. We can see that. We can see how his anxiety levels start to increase by his fiddling of his jacket. We can see by his feet that he's ready for off. His classic limbic response to stress is it's the fight, flight or freeze response. He has the flight response, he's had enough. He purposefully avoids eye contact. And then we can see the classic Dennis the Menace pose at the end where he tries to hide his hands into his jacket. We see this lady's anxiety levels start to raise slightly as well by an increase in personal space where he invades it towards the end. That's why we see that little touch of the neck dimple, which is just a little bit lower than the Adam's apple. And we can see how it manifests even more so into the arm barrier or the arm fold. So she, again, is uncomfortable with how the interview ended. So there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that video tutorial here on understanding body language. If you'd like to learn more about body language, then please check out my page on Facebook. It's called Understanding Body Language, Liars, Cheats and Happy Feet. I'm also on Twitter. It's at Body Language UK. Please follow me on there as well. And I look forward to speaking to you all soon. So there you go. So that's Ron Paul done on understanding body language, liars, cheats and happy feet. If I see any more interviews about him talking about those controversial newsletters, I might just post them on as well. And please try and share these videos as much as you can. If you think your friends and family would benefit from learning about body language and the tutorial I've given in this one, then please share it on your Facebook wall or your Twitter wall and try and get me as much press as possible. So from everyone here, understanding body language, liars, cheats and happy feet, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial and I'll speak to you all soon. So take care and bye bye for now.